Material Differences. Chapter 15, Part 1. Welcome to Civilization. "What about my plasma cutter?" Yeager asked, as he looked over the assortment of guns they had stashed in the lifter. "No, while they're technically legal in the city, you need an urban welding license, I think. We could use the nesting doll trick," Ham suggested instead. "But we're splitting up, and we don't have anything that breaks down that easily." Yeager hummed a moment. "Do you two really need to take a gun?" Raven asked from the side of the gecko. "Considering that crowd, I'd feel better with one. The city seems a little more dangerous than I was planning," Yeager admitted, and then leaned out of the lifter to the walls of the spaceport. "Oh, I can just use Spike." He activated the bot from his collection of gear. "To what?" Ham asked with a frown. "He can scale the walls and avoid the checkpoint altogether." Yeager answered and handed the bot his .45 along with 3 extra magazines. "Good point." Ham nodded and started to reach for the Eden Armory Buzzsaw PDW. "What? Spike can't carry all this. Besides, you're going to somewhere safe. You don't need a gun," Yeager scoffed. "Fine. I'll just take some of the carbon blades." Ham started to reach out for a few of the knives Yeager had laid out, but Yeager just slapped his hand away. "Those are mine!" he scolded Ham. "Oh, come on. I don't get a gun or a knife," he protested. "You're Yeager caught himself from finishing that and looked around a moment to make sure there wasn't anyone near them. "If you get into a close-up fight with someone, you're better off punching them." "It's a matter of appearances." "It's more believable if I use a knife," Ham countered. Yeager thought that over a moment, and with a sigh handed Ham one of his knives. Then he tucked one of his into the spot in his boots for it, and another up his sleeve into a specially designed pocket. He wasn't all that worried about them being spotted, as even more advanced scanners had trouble detecting them, and he figured they had cheap scanners here. "If you're having Spike bring you a gun, why take knives?" Raven asked as they began to put the other weapons away. "He can't come straight to me if there's a crowd out there," Yeager explained. "They're just a precaution." "Oh, if someone out there also has a knife?" Raven asked. "Not exactly. It depends on who might be a threat. If they know what they're doing, my best bet is just to run away," Yeager mentioned. "What? You?" Raven asked, surprised to hear him talking about running from a fight. "Yes, me," he nodded. "It doesn't matter how good I am, the general rule is avoid a fight, especially if I'm dealing with an experienced knife fighter. If 2 fighters with knives know what they're doing, then the loser dies on the spot, and the winner dies on the way to the hospital. Knife fighting at nasty, brutal stuff," Yeager stressed. "These are to dissuade inexperienced knife fighters or any thugs who don't have any blades at all." "That and to get dirt out from under your nails," Ham added. "By using an incredibly sharp knife?" Despite the silver-scorched mask covering her face, Yeager could picture her arched eyebrow at his comment. "It's very good at cleaning out dirt. Or cutting your fingertips off. Just a matter of being careful." Ham grinned at her. "Regardless, I think that's settled." Yeager stepped back and tapped on his phone to make sure Spike had a signal. After a moment, the bot chirped and scurried out of the lifter and into the shadows of the spaceport. He reached a hand up to help Raven step down from the lifter. "Got everything?" he asked the 2 of them. "Yep," Raven replied as she hefted her bag a moment, and Ham beyond her also lifted his. With that done, Yeager slid the door of the lifter shut, and they headed towards the customs checkpoint. There was only one stand open, but they were also among the only people there, so it was fine. Yeager pulled out his ID and then stepped up to the scanners before the customs agent and waited with a practiced expression of uninterested boredom. After a moment, the scanner flashed green, and he stepped forward to hand the agent his ID. "Where are you coming from, Mr. Sherman?" the agent asked as he ran the ID through his system. "Circuit Mountain this morning. Then stopped at my home in Columbia. Flight plan will verify." As he said that, the agent arched his eyebrows a moment and took a slightly more careful look at the screen. "Columbia? Not Basin," he confirmed. "Stuck on the wrong side of the city?" Yeager shrugged it off. "Business or leisure?" the agent asked next as he tapped on his keyboard. "Leisure, I guess?" Yeager shrugged. The agent nodded and looked like he was about to pull Yeager's ID to hand it back, but then there was a chirp from the terminal, and the man frowned for a moment. Jaeger suppressed his urge to reach for a knife and just waited, still looking bored. Could you elaborate? What you're here for? Where are you headed? The agent asked next. Other side of the river. Looking for some old friends around, Silas Shade. Is it still called that? He asked then, unsure if that's what the neighborhood was still called. It is. The agent nodded and once more started to reach for Jaeger's ID, only to be stopped by a chirp from the terminal. The agent sighed and continued. The best route would be to head out of the spaceport and continue to the metro rail station. Take the blue line 2 stops north and you should be in the area you want. Can I ask, what's with the beeps? Jaeger asked, then with a nod at the terminal. The agent glanced up and to the side, so Jaeger followed his glance to see an office with a big window overlooking them. A man inside was watching them through blinds, and upon realizing he was being watched, snapped them shut, as if that were somehow less obvious. Manager, the agent answered once he saw the blinds were closed. A micromanager, eh? Jaeger asked. The microest, the agent nodded. They're concerned about, the friendly welcome people can expect when they travel here, in spite of the noise. The agent jerked a thumb over his shoulder to the exit where the chants calling for the death of synths was still coming loud and clear. Wouldn't it be easier to have the cops clear them out? Jaeger asked, but the agent just shrugged and gave him a look that Jaeger was familiar with. It was the "do I look like I know what the fuck command is thinking?" Look. Well, speaking of the happy crowd outside, my daughter and friend are heading into the city center. He pointed to Raven and Ham waiting behind him. Is there a way they can avoid the crowd? Come on up. The agent waved them forward then. As they handed him their IDs, he scanned them real quick as well. You've got hotel reservations at... He trailed off as he read his screen. You two can head up those stairs. He pointed to stairs just before the exit. And wait for the monorail up at the station. It'll take you basically right to your hotel. Jaeger nodded slowly. Heading to city center? Take the nice elevated safe monorail straight from the spaceport. Going across the river? Underground you go? It might just have something to do with why they don't waste the effort in clearing those idiots out. The agent shrugged and then handed everyone their IDs back. Welcome to civilization, as the sign says. Travel safe. They walked past as the agent waved forward the next person behind them, a lone pilot from the looks of things. As they got up to the stairs where their paths would diverge, Jaeger took a moment to give Raven a quick hug. You two have fun at the museums. I'll see you in a day or two. Let me know if anything changes, Ham mentioned with a nod. Stay safe, Raven added as she pulled out of the hug. Jaeger watched them head up the stairs a moment before sighing and turning to walk out the regular spaceport exit. Death to synths! Death to synths! The chants were getting louder as he reached the automated funneling doors that would stop him from turning back into the spaceport. With a sigh, he rotated his shoulders and got ready for whatever he might find on the other side, before finally heading through. Once he came out, he was actually surprised to see that he wasn't dealing with hundreds of protesters or the like, but 2 or 3 dozen. Half of them were armed with megaphones, however, which helped explain why they were so loud. They were spread out around the entrance to take up as much space as they could, rather than clustering in one spot. A good number of them also had matching uniforms, might not be the right word, but matching outfits. Red shirts, jeans, and some sort of white armbands. The ones with the armbands were watching people walking past and looked like muscle. Jaeger took his time to examine the crowd before him. He couldn't figure out what it was exactly they were protesting or even doing here. Sure, chant death to synths all you want. But why? Why here? Did they think synths were in the spaceport? And the customs agent made it sound like this was a regular thing. He watched a few people passing the area get stopped by the thugs in the red shirts. After a moment, the civilians forked over some scrip, and the thugs let them pass. So a simple shakedown scheme then. He relaxed a little as he realized what he was dealing with, and made for the edge of the crowd on his way to the metro rail station the signs were pointing to ahead. As he made for the edge of the crowd, he saw a group of the thugs move ahead of his path, blocking his way. Hello, friend, one in the front said with a tone to make it clear they weren't friends. Care to make a donation to the Pure Organic Party? His tone still making it clear it wasn't really a question. At least that's what he thought. Jaeger examined the lead thug, such as he was. He looked like he was maybe in his late teens, perhaps early 20s, too young by far to have fought in the war. He also wasn't impressive as far as muscle went, more of a scrappy skinhead than anything. "No, I don't think I will," Yeager replied simply, tucking the fingers of his hand into his shirt to grab the edge of his knife, just in case. "Come on, friend. Clearly you must care about our cause. We're here to end the synth menace that oppresses regular organics like us. Something all should rally behind," the thug offered as the other thugs around him began to spread out a bit. "That is, unless you're a synth? Do you really think a synth would fly to this shithole and walk out the front door? You must be even dumber than you look. And frankly, you already look like an idiot." Yeager knew it wasn't smart to antagonize people like this, but he just couldn't help it. That little voice in the back of his mind was still greedy for justifiable violence. The thug glared as Yeager responded like that. "Well, if you're not a synth, you wouldn't mind if we give your arm a little cut. Prove you're human!" The thug grinned and reached for a knife on his belt. Yeager just smirked as he saw it. It was one of those overly fancy types that idiots paid far too much for at knife shops and shopping centers when they had no idea what a good knife really was. First of all, a proper synth would still bleed if cut, and second, you try it and I'll open your throat, then pull your tongue out through the hole. Yeager replied, which made the thug frown. In fact, the others around him nervously shifted as well. They likely weren't used to someone behaving like this. "Angry one, huh?" the head thug replied as he shifted a bit, still trying to look tough despite having to literally look up at Yeager. "That kind of talk won't get you far here. More of us than you. No cops around." "True. And I am outnumbered, so I'd likely go down, but not before I killed you." Yeager stared the thug down. "Then you." He looked to his left at one of the thugs trying to edge around his side. "Then probably you." He looked to the thug at his right. "Because unlike any of you young little shits, I've killed people. I know exactly what that entails and I'm more than ready for it. So if you start anything, just know I'll kill as many of you as I possibly can before you take me down. And even the survivors will be missing important bits of their bodies they won't get back." The thugs around him were clearly more nervous, which was as much his reason for talking shit as anything else. Get them to doubt themselves, to question how worth it this was. Make it clear that any escalation of violence would be a massive undertaking. Most of the other thugs were now focused on their leader before Yeager. He was the only one who didn't look ready to back down. He licked his lips nervously, hand tugging at the hilt of his overpriced, poorly made knife. "Knock it off, you fucking mongrels!" Yeager and the others looked over at an approaching figure. A man in a red shirt with some sort of black tabs on his collar. The real leader, apparently. "Stop harassing the vet," he ordered and waved a hand as the thugs backed off. "Storm Chief, he refused a donation and was behaving in a synth-like fashion," the thug before Yeager said. "It's a suggested donation, idiot, and he will kill you if you try anything. You're staring death in the face, boy, now back off." The man waved them aside and they cleared a path for Yeager as the apparent Storm Chief approached. "Sorry about them," he said and extended a hand to Yeager. "Jack Kearney." Yeager hesitated but then reached forward to shake the man's hand. He was bigger than Yeager, unlike the other young thugs. Based on his age and the tats on his arms, Yeager figured him for a Marine. He lacked the purple of a Void Marine though, so maybe American? Yeager. He didn't provide his last name as he shook the man's hand, but did start to walk forward out of the crowd with him. "So what were you in the war?" the thug officer asked as they walked. "Pioneer," Yeager said simply, noticing the other thugs followed along, but at a distance. "A combat engineer? No wonder you were willing to take on my donation collectors. Only crazy fucks would wander into battle with little more than explosives and power tools." The man laughed as if they were old friends already. "Everyone seems to think we had dynamite or nitro strapped to our backs. But composite doesn't explode from impacts, you know," Yeager mentioned. "Ah, still think you were plenty brave and plenty crazy to build bridges while everyone around you tried to burn them," the man explained with a shrug. "What brings you to Sawtown?" "I'm not sure what business that is of yours," Yeager replied, keeping his fingertips on the edge of his knife. I mean no harm. Don't worry about my overzealous minions." He jerked a thumb at the thugs behind them. "Vets gotta stick together is all. Which is why you might be interested in our organization. Some real dedicated politicians trying to get vets like us what we're really owed. Solid men and women all around. We're always looking for skilled vets to fill our ranks. I fought alongside synths, you know, Yeager mentioned, wondering if that would drive the man off. Nothing wrong with that. I might have fought alongside them myself, he replied to Yeager's surprise. Not exactly alongside. I fought with the Americans back then, but you know how it was? Everyone against the hive. All hands on board, that sort of thing. They just use it to rile people up is all. Where'd you see action with synths? Aidenshard. Technically more than that, but Yeager knew his cover identity had records. Phew, that had to be a tough one. If you made it out alive, no wonder you don't have bad blood with synths. But we're about more than that, trust me. If you change your mind, or just need proof you're a friend to us. He pulled a business card from a pocket, then to hand to Yeager. Jack Kearney, Storm Chief Pop. Hall Hash 1, Salavis City. Had a phone number and some contact info on it as well. On the back was a black and red Valknut, which Yeager then realized was on the white armbands the thugs wore. Valknut? He asked with a nod at the symbol. Nordic. Connection to Ragnarok? Or just idiots? To symbolize honoring the lost and the purity of organic blood, Jack explained. Yeager was about to point out that they didn't really know what it was originally meant to symbolize, but figured the thug didn't actually care. We'd be happy to have another vet, Yeager, especially a pioneer. Good money in it for party officers. He grinned wide, as if he were just pitching a job and not a career as a thug. I'll think it over, Yeager replied. Safe travels, friend. If you're taking the metro rail across the river to look for friends around the old VA at Silas Shade, we've got a hall out there. Check it out, he added, guessing at Yeager's purpose for being here. I'll keep that in mind. Yeager nodded once more and pulled away from him. He pocketed the card and walked ahead into the stairs leading down into the station. Spike would have to catch up across the river. He tapped on his phone to send the appropriate signals to the bot while heading below ground. The Void public transit systems used to be known for being clean, efficient, cheap, and quick. But as he headed down the stairs and saw the graffiti on the walls and the dirt along the floor, he struck clean off that list. When he got to the main station itself, he saw they'd actually installed physical turnstiles. Long gone were the days of easy scan passes monitored by Wi-Fi. Inspecting the map on a wall, he pulled a bill from his wallet and paid for a one-way pass. The first time he put the bill into the machine, it spat it back out at him, fluttering in the air a moment before he caught it. Muttering under his breath, he rubbed it along the edge of the machine to try and get the crease out and tried again. He could hear the machine whir, and was wondering if it was about to spit the now shredded bill into his face, but it finally accepted the script and just gave him his ticket, along with a few coins in change. So it was still cheap at least. The turnstile punched his ticket when he slipped it through, and he proceeded down to the platform to wait on the trains. There was more graffiti down here, but they made an effort to keep the ads clean because of course they did. Long gone were the fancy holo displays and interactive games, replaced with much more plain physical posters and pictures. Mostly it was for local stuff too, instead of the massive megacorp ads he was used to. Restaurants, car dealerships, even a few travel ads, though they were mostly just offering continental trips. Once on the platform, the sign that was supposed to show how long till the next train was broken, but based on the small crowd waiting, he hoped it was coming soon. Thankfully, he was right as he heard the whoosh of the train from down the tunnel. It pulled into a stop at the platform with only a slight squeak of the brakes, and while the train itself was also covered in graffiti, at least it still seemed to be quick. After letting the few people getting off the train past, he stepped on and found himself a seat. After a few minutes, the train started moving again, and he looked around the half-empty train car thinking about the transit system. It seemed to be microcosm of the situation of the Pact as a government. It was built upon something older and likely better. It was dirty and not very appealing to the eye, but it still worked. It was functioning and doing its job as best it could. He didn't see any signs of dangerous people on the train, and none of the travelers looked particularly worried. A few had old earbuds and were listening to music. Some had quiet conversations, others were reading physical books. The world had ended, and yet it still continued. Leaning back in his seat, he simply watched the tunnel blur past the window on their way to the next station. More people got on here to get across the river, but there were still plenty of open seats. The next leg would be longer as they headed under the river. There used to be a plan to make the cross-river trip a tube so people could see the water around them, but that had been scraped by the war. Soon enough, the train began to slow and then pulled into the station he wanted. As he got up, he noticed there were even less people getting off here than the last one. Once he stepped off the train onto the next platform, it looked like a carbon copy of the one by the spaceport. Same level of grime, same level of graffiti, same broken sign. The only thing that had changed were the names on the physical signs pointing up to the street entrances. From here, he wasn't actually sure where to go. He had a general idea, but he figured the layout had changed since he'd last been here. Slowly heading up the stairs to the surface, he checked his phone as it beeped. Spike was on his way but would need time to navigate the city. He trusted the bot would make it sooner or later. Once he made it to the surface, he looked around a moment to get his bearings, but was interrupted by a growl in his stomach. He realized then he hadn't eaten since that morning. The raid on the hive with Tanya had messed up his plans. Well, then he knew what he'd do to wait on his bot. Looking around for a moment, he mostly saw closed shops with barred windows. But then he smiled as he saw a Japesi diner nearby. It looked fairly empty, just a few customers. It wasn't all that late, was it? He checked his watch to confirm it was still relatively early in the night. Just seemed like the area wasn't busy at night like it used to be.